Welcome to HIT Podcast, HIT, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we're dropping into your feed with what we hope are bite-sized, digestible, really well-curated conversations going on in the space. Very excited for today's episode. Very excited, if you're audio only, for a nice in-person visit from someone I'm very excited to get into with. Really quickly, this episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, John Tackman. John, thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad to have you on. And I guess really quick to kind of give the audience a little bit of kind of an overview into how you get in the chair. We met on LinkedIn and we're discussing kind of the pharmaceutical world and how that fits into the overall ecosystem. And I just am always so grateful when folks will, A, be willing to be generous with their knowledge, but B, have such a wealth of it that it's just so great to have you in. So maybe just by way of super quick intro, like, who's John? How did you get in the chair? What are we here to talk about today?
Sure. I mean, I walked in through the door and got in the chair, so that was always a big plus. But,
You're not going to tell them about tripping and falling? You're just going to act like you did this seamlessly?
Seamlessly. Absolutely. I think the main thing is, I've been in the insurance business for almost 15 years now. 10 of those have been in pharmacy. Yeah. I really enjoy what I do from a lot of perspectives. A lot of it is learning and engaging with people and educating people every single day, because this is a very confusing industry, I think, to most people.
Yeah, I completely concur. Even I was listening to a podcast where two insurance consultants were talking, and one of them kind of admitted, he's like, I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't really know all of it, and let alone the benefits, administrators and HR folk out there. So I'm glad you're here, because it's literally the premise of the show is I used to have these conversations just kind of behind four walls, and we talk to people and they would download their expertise to us, and then I'm supposed to then go download it to the HR teams, which I've been doing. You mentioned 15, upwards of 20 for me as well. But I just found so much interesting conversation happening kind of behind the scenes that I was like, why don't we put some cameras on and have HR listening in directly to some of the folks and kind of what they're saying and what they're doing. So when you talk about you're in pharmacy, quote unquote, and you're educating people, let's drill down. Like, are you dispensing Advil? You know what I mean? Like, let's get into it. What are we doing?
I think my closest friends and family really truly believe that I sell drugs from a legal perspective, which is always hilarious. So I work in a small niche market of the pharmacy benefit management space of insurance. So what that means is I'm part of the drug card benefit solution for these employer groups. For those who are privileged enough to be self-funding, we can work directly with them to help lower their costs and educate them on what they can do from many different levers perspective. I love having these candid conversations because it gives people the background to actually see, we're real humans behind the door, right? I know everybody gets
strapping,
upset.
By the way, again, for audio only, strapping humans, bro. Check you out, man.
So I'm
not going to be out head of hair on my own podcast, dude. Come on.
I think the reality is that they think we're rehearsed practice robots and that we're supposed to regurgitate this information. I've spent, multiple years, multiple hours, multiple weeks we're understanding legislation, drug mix, science behind it. And the reality is I'm not a pharmacist, but I have to explain things to a wealth of knowledge that some of the degrees out there just don't get to. And so I think that's really important. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I gave a talk. I was at the CAHR. I was the keynote speaker on the main stage. It was a great opportunity, and shout out those guys and Raphael. And one of the things I talked about was, from a layer of understanding standpoint, you might be at the surface level, kind of like watching baseball, right? Or you might be able to really drill down and see a lot of what's kind of going on the field and appreciate it at different levels. So before we dive too deep, literally starting at the surface level, I think people just hearing PBM, pharmacy benefit manager, and understanding that there's a whole industry that what they exist to do is kind of be, and I'll let you describe it in your own words, but maybe to tease it, I always sort of think at a high level, it's like the connective tissue. Someone's out there manufacturing drugs. Yeah. Right. Some of your employees are out there needing a prescription.
Right.
Some pharmacist is dispensing this stuff.
Right.
And someone needs to connect those dots and hit the plan spend. Right. And that's kind of where the PBM fills in my opinion, but maybe elaborate on that and dive into sort of when you're asked, like, what is a PBM? Like, what is a PBM?
Yeah, I think I get that question quite often. And honestly, a PBM gets categorized as being a middleman, but I liked your definition a little bit better about the connective tissue, because in reality, an employer could never be the bridge to a pharmacy, to a manufacturer, to a wholesaler, to the member, because that would obviously cross HIPAA lines as well. And so the PBM, the right PBM partner, will ultimately really be that conduit, right? How do I get my members to actually take the medications that are helping them with their conditions, but are also right for the budget that we've set for our employee benefit plan? And the right partners will help educate and explore those options for certain employers. So, and the reality is that we are trying to do so to leverage, kind of the vision of what it is they're trying to accomplish,
And when I sometimes picture employers listening to this going like, oh, we don't have a PBM, or we don't need a PBM, or that's not for me, or something. I just want to go, yeah, you do, right? Like, I think maybe letting employers listening know every employer plan has a pharmacy benefit manager behind the scenes that's doing this stuff.
Yep. Doesn't matter if you're fully insured or self-funded, you have a PBM that's doing something behind the scenes. Maybe some are better than others, and maybe some are not being sued by the government or what have you. But at the end of the day, I think people need to realize that they are the reasons that their drug prices are what they are, in for good or bad, right? Because you've got manufacturers who are trying to push their profit line. You've got carriers who are trying to push their revenue, but the right partner in the PBM space will do neither, right? They'll get access to the members, the drugs they need for the right prices.
I love that you say that. And I just want to, in an attempt to keep this linear, because I do want to dive down that rabbit hole. On the fully insured side, you really don't have much, really, if any, kind of say who the PBM that's bolted onto the plan is. But you teased earlier, for those of you that might be self-funded, self-insured. So the way that the employer grapples with their health insurance portfolio is in a self-funded kind of mechanism. Now you really can plug and play who that connective tissue is. And for those that kind of hear the big three, or even kind of big three bad, I'll do the dirty work and kind of define that it's Express Scripts, it's Optum, it's I guess if you throw in Prime,
CVS.
and CVS, those kind of four make up about 70%, 80+% of the market. He's still pointing upwards. Those four represent a ton of the machinations that occur in the space, but there's probably, you tell me, 60 to 70 good operating PBMs in this country now, and you represent not only a great one that I want to get into, but just the idea of an independent, non-big guy PBM, and why an employer listening that might be in a self-funded or even considering a self-funded space should take a second, drill down, and say, God, if this is going to be 25, 35% of my plan spend, maybe more depending, this is going to be a huge part of this plan spend, which is a huge part of my budget. This is not shiny object syndrome. This is not chasing after some ticky-tack part of the plan. This is a major part of the plan. And so I want to kind of set all that for the audience that might be listening now as kind of the why on why we're here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, you're really subjected to benefit design manipulation for fully insured, and that's sort of it. You can have sort of restricted formularies and what have you, but those are all set by one of the large PBMs, because those are only the PBMs that are behind the large carriers. Yeah. So if you're working with any of the BUCAs, right, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, et cetera, you are essentially tied to ESI, Optum, or CVS.
Yep.
Period.
ESI Express Scripts.
Yeah, ESI, thank you, Express Scripts, or CVS, Caremark. Yep. And in that vein, they're setting up their formularies, their lists of drugs, as it were, to really advantage their bottom line, their shareholders, right? Because that's where they make the biggest profit, is on all these big fully insured plans. For those employers who have the privilege, I'm going to say, to go self-funding,
bless you,
it really is an honor to be able to have that optionality at the end of the day. And I think too many employers probably get bogged down with all of the different levers and channels they can pull. Yeah. And it does require a little bit of time investment. But there is plenty of case
From
studies.
a knowledge standpoint, or what do you mean time investment? Does it add more to their daily workflow?
It possibly could add more to the daily work for those CFOs, CHROs, directors of human resources, anybody who's actually hands-in on the employee benefit plan. I think there is a little bit of time investment there. But what I've seen, some really innovative strategies out there that anybody can actually employ. You can actually hire more staff to tackle just the pharmacy benefit, depending on your size and your budget. Yeah. You can hire independent consultants. You can work with Montage. You can work with anybody who understands this benefit and help you make those choices. But ultimately, if you don't go self-funded, you don't have the option.
Right.
You're not even coming to the table.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because there is a lot of options. And that is something that we do for our clients and prospective clients, obviously, is to say, hey, again, this is a huge piece of your plan spend. It deserves a lot of time in the sun. And who the PBM matters. And you even talked a minute ago about the formulary. And I wonder if people listening don't really pull back that curtain, because when you say formulary, it's the drugs that your employees are getting steered to. Yep. It's I showed up with a script for albuterol, but they issued me a brain inhaler or whatever. Like, it went from one manufacturer's X drug to a different manufacturer's X-ish drug. And that was steered maybe because it was the right drug at the right dose at the right price.
Maybe. Yeah, but probably not. Let's face it, with 85% of the scripts being handled by CVS, Optum, and Express Scripts, aka ESI, they tend to steer it towards their manufacturers who are ultimately helping their revenue, right? Not the manufacturers, the PBMs revenue.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter if you go with one test strip over another for diabetes, because they're all going to perform the same function, but they're set up to be kind of against each other in the PBM world, where one manufacturer will partner with one PBM and the other will partner with the other to hopefully drive more utilization.
Yeah.
But there is an alternative perspective to formularies, and I'm glad you brought up that, because formularies in general are a very confusing topic, right? You want to have the most access you can for your members, but you don't also want to be the decision maker for what drugs are actually covered. So finding the right partner who has a formulary that's set up really from a value perspective.
Yep.
And that's what really MedOne does.
Yes.
And a lot of really good transparent PBMs out there. And so MedOne has really centered their formulary around the
MedOne is a PBM who you work with.
Thank you. Yeah. MedOne is my primary PBM that I work with. Obviously, I have a brand outside of that on LinkedIn. But there are plenty of good PBMs out there who really have set up their formulary, that list of drugs, to be the most efficacious, which means the most effective for a member, and the most value add. So it means what is it they're actually providing from a cost perspective.
Yep.
And then there's the specialty medications, which I don't know if you want to get into it for this question.
Man, I do.
But we do need to get into it.
That's all the time we have for you this week. We are trying to keep to our commitment to be bite-sized, digestible. My conversation with John ran a little bit long, so we're going to break it into two halves. It is a fascinating conversation. Thank you for joining us this week. We will pick up next week. Join us next week for part 2 of my conversation with John. Until then, thank you to the sponsors, Rula, Excel Health, TrueHue, Montage Insurance Solutions, the guys keeping the lights on. We're blessed to be here. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next week for the thrilling conclusion. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week.